Part 1. The Arrival of the Human. The palace of the Zathari Empire stood like a mountain of shining stone, its spires reaching high above the clouds of their capital world. Inside those walls lived Queen Illustra, ruler of one of the oldest and proudest alien civilizations in the galaxy. For centuries, the Zathari had feared only one thing: humans. Stories about humans traveled from colony to colony, told in whispers. They were called Deathworlders, beings who came from a dangerous planet full of storms, predators, and endless hardships. Where other species would have perished, humans thrived. They healed from wounds faster, survived poisons longer, and adapted to situations that no other alien could endure. To the Zathari, these stories were terrifying. Humans were not just strange, they were dangerous. Queen Illustra herself had spoken against humans many times in her council chambers. She had declared them unpredictable, wild, and far too risky to be allowed near her people. "They smile one moment and fight the next," she once said to her advisors. "How can such a species be trusted with the future of our children?" The council always agreed. No human had ever been allowed inside the royal palace, but times were changing. The Galactic Council, which connected hundreds of civilizations, had formed a new alliance after recent wars. Part of that agreement required humans to serve in positions of trust, even among species that feared them. And so one day Queen Illustra received word. A human would arrive at her palace to serve as a medic and trainer for the younglings. The queen was furious. Her guards trembled as she raised her voice in the throne room. "A human? In my palace? Near my daughter?" She nearly tore the message apart, but protocol bound her hands. Refusing the council's demand would risk breaking the treaty. And so, despite her anger, she prepared for the arrival of Captain Elias Grant, a human medic known for his work on the border colonies. When he stepped off the transport, the entire palace felt the weight of his presence. Elias was tall, his shoulders broad, his uniform simple but neat. His hands bore old scars, and his eyes were sharp as if they had seen storms and battles the Zathari could not imagine. The guards stiffened, their claws twitching on their weapons. Servants whispered behind the pillars, some shrinking away, others staring in awe. To the Zathari, he looked exactly as the stories described, a scary human. His steps echoed heavily as he was escorted through the grand halls. The queen watched from her throne as he entered. She thought his gaze too steady, his expression too calm, almost as if he feared nothing at all. When the queen's daughter, young Princess Leora, peeked from behind a curtain, the attendants gasped. The princess was small for her age, her bright eyes full of curiosity. She had heard whispers of the human too. But unlike the others, she did not flinch when she saw him. Instead, she tilted her head, studying him the way children study something new. That evening, the queen tried to calm her daughter in the nursery. The child often had trouble sleeping, plagued by strange fears and restless nights. Attendants hummed lullabies, the queen held her hand, but the girl remained uneasy. Finally, Princess Leora tugged at her mother's robe and whispered words that froze everyone in the chamber. "Mother, I want the scary human to tuck me in." The room went silent. The attendants dropped their voices. The guards exchanged nervous glances. Even the queen, who had faced rival kings and deadly assassins, could not speak for a moment. She stared at her daughter, certain she had heard wrong. What did you say, child?" the queen asked softly, almost hoping the words would change. "I want him," Princess Leora said again, her voice steady but gentle. "The human. The scary one. He makes me feel safe." The attendants gasped, some covering their mouths. Never in history had a royal child asked for such a thing. The queen's mind raced. How could her daughter feel safe with a creature everyone else feared? It went against everything she believed, everything she had taught her people. Yet her daughter's eyes did not lie. The child was not afraid. She wanted the human. The queen, proud and strong, found herself without words. For the first time in her long reign, she was speechless. She looked at the guards. They shifted uneasily, waiting for her command. Should she forbid it? Should she scold the child? But then she looked back at her daughter, whose small hands clutched the blanket, whose eyes shone with hope. The queen's chest tightened. Against all reason, against her pride, she realized she could not simply say no. Outside the nursery, Captain Elias stood waiting, unaware of the storm that had just begun inside the queen's heart. The queen had not planned for this. Her daughter's request kept echoing in her mind like a drumbeat she could not silence. I want the scary human to tuck me in. Queen Elistra spent the entire evening debating. Her pride told her to refuse. No human should come near her child. But her daughter's stubbornness was known throughout the palace. Princess Leora rarely asked for anything, but when she did, she would not let go easily. The queen sighed, realizing that if she forced her daughter into sleep without granting this strange request, the child's restlessness would only grow worse. Finally, against every instinct, Queen Elistra gave the order. The guards frowned, the attendants whispered in fear, but the queen's voice was firm. Summon the human. Captain Elias was led into the nursery under the watchful eyes of heavily armed guards. The alien attendants pressed themselves against the walls, their faces pale. The queen sat near her daughter's bed, ready to leap at the slightest wrong movement. When Elias entered, he bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that surprised many of the Zathari. He carried no weapon, no tool, only himself. His voice was deep but calm. You called for me? The queen's daughter sat up eagerly, her small antenna-like ridges twitching in excitement. Yes, Princess Leora said, her voice soft but full of hope. Can you tuck me in? Elias blinked. He had treated soldiers on battlefields, patched wounds, and faced emergencies, but this request was new. Still, he smiled gently and walked closer. Every guard tensed, their hands ready on their weapons, but the queen raised her hand, commanding silence. The human knelt beside the bed. His large scarred hands moved slowly, carefully pulling the soft blanket over the small alien child. His touch, though strong, was gentle, like a breeze over still water. He adjusted the edges of the blanket so no cold draft could disturb her. Then in a voice steady and low, he began to hum. It was not a Zathari lullaby. It was an old earth song, one that human children had fallen asleep to for generations. The tune was simple, the rhythm calming, carrying with it a strange warmth that seemed to flow into the room itself. The attendants stared in disbelief. They had tried everything for months to soothe the princess. Songs, medicines, soft lights, gentle talks, but nothing had worked. Yet within moments, the restless child's breathing slowed. Her eyelids grew heavy. She gave a small smile, clutching her blanket as if it were a treasure, and then drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep. The room was silent. No one spoke. Even the guards lowered their weapons slowly, as if afraid to break the fragile moment. The queen's chest tightened. For so long her daughter had fought sleep like a battlefield. Night after night the queen herself had stayed awake, singing, comforting, pleading. And now, with just a blanket and a song, the human had done what no one else could. Queen Elistra's pride stung. How could this be? How could a creature she had despised hold such gentle power over her child? She clenched her jaw, but inside her heart something was shifting. From that night forward, Princess Leora asked for Elias every evening. I want the human, she would say with bright eyes. And though the queen hesitated each time, she could not deny the results. Her daughter was calmer, brighter, and full of energy during the day. She no longer woke screaming in the night. She no longer carried dark circles under her eyes. The palace began to notice. Servants whispered in the halls. Guards exchanged glances when they saw Elias walking toward the nursery each evening. Some muttered, "The child is becoming too attached." Others argued, "Perhaps the human has some secret power." But none could deny the truth. The princess was healthier and happier than before. The queen wrestled with her own doubts. At council meetings, she found herself distracted. The other nobles spoke of trade and treaties, but her mind always returned to her daughter's peaceful face when Elias tucked her in. She wanted to dismiss it as coincidence, but deep down she knew better. One evening, as Elias left the nursery after another successful night, the queen finally spoke to him directly. "Why does she trust you?" she asked, her voice firm, though curiosity flickered in her eyes. Elias paused. He could have spoken of human resilience, of instincts, of training. But instead he said something simple. "Children know when they are safe. They feel it here." He placed a hand over his chest. "It is not about power or fear. It is about care." The queen studied him for a long moment. His words were not what she expected. There was no pride, no boasting, only truth. She said nothing more, but his words stayed with her long into the night. Days turned into weeks. The routine became almost natural. Every night Elias would sit by the princess's bed, telling soft stories of Earth, of rivers, forests, and skies filled with stars. The child listened with wide eyes until sleep carried her away, and every morning she would wake refreshed, running to her mother with laughter that had been missing before. The queen's heart struggled between fear and gratitude. To admit that a human had brought peace to her child felt like betrayal to her people, yet she could not deny what she saw with her own eyes. The whispers in the palace grew louder. Some feared the child would love the human more than her own kind. Others began to wonder if the stories about humans were wrong. Could it be that these scary beings held not only strength but kindness? The queen refused to speak her thoughts aloud, but inside, cracks had begun to form in the wall of fear she had built around her heart. She had once declared humans monsters, but every night as she watched her daughter fall asleep under the care of one, she began to wonder, perhaps humans were not monsters at all. Perhaps they were something far more complicated, something she was only beginning to understand. And though she would not admit it, the queen knew one thing for certain: her daughter's trust in the Huma. Art 3, The Queen's Revelation. The palace of the Zathari had grown quieter in recent days. Whispers of the human's presence were no longer filled only with fear. They now carried curiosity. Some servants who once hid from him now peeked from corners to watch. Guards who once kept their hands tightly on their weapons now stood a little more at ease. And yet for Queen Elistra, the struggle inside her heart grew stronger. She still remembered the first time her daughter had asked for Elias. That strange request had shaken her. But what followed was even harder to deny. Night after night, the princess slept peacefully under the human's care. The queen, who once stayed awake through endless nights beside her restless child, could not ignore what she now saw. Still, her pride fought against her gratitude. She could not simply walk into the council chamber and say, "A human saved my daughter's rest." The nobles would laugh, or worse, they would accuse her of weakness. Yet each time she looked at Princess Leora's smiling face in the morning, Elistra's walls of doubt weakened a little more. Then came the night that changed everything. It began quietly, with the soft hum of the palace's nightlights and the usual routine of guards walking their patrols. Princess Leora was already tucked into bed by Elias, drifting into sleep as he told her a soft Earth story about a blue planet, where children played under open skies. The queen sat nearby, silent as always, watching both her daughter and the human. But then the silence of the night was broken by a sound no one wanted to hear: an alarm. A sharp ringing cry filled the palace halls. Guards shouted in the distance. Heavy footsteps rushed closer. The queen rose to her feet instantly, her heart racing. An assassination attempt. The Zathari Empire had many enemies, and not all threats came from far-off worlds. Rival houses hungry for the throne had waited for a chance to strike. Tonight they had chosen their moment well. The doors to the nursery burst open as two cloaked figures charged inside. Their weapons glowed faintly, sharp and deadly. The attendants screamed. Guards moved to intercept, but they were seconds too far. Before anyone else could react, Elias moved. The human did not hesitate. He placed himself directly between the assassins and the princess's bed, his body a shield. His stance was firm, his eyes sharp, and though he carried no weapon, his presence alone seemed like a wall of steel. The assassins lunged. Elias caught the first strike with his arm, twisting the attacker's wrist and forcing the weapon to the ground. With a swift motion, he shoved the figure backward, slamming them against the wall. The second attacker tried to push past him, aiming for the child, but Elias blocked the path, his voice low and fierce. "You'll have to go through me first." The queen watched, stunned. This was the creature she had once called dangerous, a monster to be feared. Yet here he was, risking his life without thought, standing unarmed against blades for a child not of his kind. Princess Leora clutched her blanket tightly. Her wide eyes locked on Elias. Her small voice trembled, but her words were clear. "Don't let go." Those words seemed to fuel him. With strength that shocked even the guards, Elias overpowered the second attacker, twisting their arm until the weapon clattered to the floor. By then, the Zathari guards had rushed in, surrounding the intruders and dragging them away. The room fell silent again. The attendants trembled. The queen stood frozen. And Elias, breathing heavily but unhurt, turned to the princess. He knelt, his voice soft once more. "It's over. You're safe now." The little alien child threw her arms around him, clinging to him as if she never wanted to let go. The queen felt her heart tighten in a way she had never known. For the first time she saw Elias not as a scary outsider, not as a threat to her people, but as something far greater. He was a protector, a guardian, a being whose strength came not only from survival, but from his willingness to stand between danger and the innocent. Slowly, Elistra stepped forward. Her voice, usually sharp and commanding, was quiet. "Human," she said, searching for words. Her pride fought her, but gratitude pressed harder. "You have my gratitude." Elias bowed his head, saying nothing more. His silence spoke louder than any words. From that night on, everything changed. The guards who once looked at him with suspicion now saluted him with respect. The attendants who once whispered in fear now bowed politely. And the princess, she no longer called him the scary human. To her, he was simply the one who makes me safe. The queen, though she never admitted it publicly, carried a secret in her heart. She realized why humans were so feared across the galaxy. It was not only their resilience or their strange ability to survive deadly worlds. It was not only their scars or their strength. The true power of humans was something else entirely. It was their capacity to care, to protect without hesitation, to love fiercely even across the borders of species. That truth humbled the queen. For years she had spoken against humans, warning her people of their dangers. Yet here, under her own roof, a single human had shown her something she could not deny. Humans were not monsters. They were miracles shaped by hardship, carrying within them a fire that could both terrify and comfort. As she stood beside her daughter's bed that night, watching the child sleep peacefully under Elias's watchful eye, Queen Elistra whispered words only to herself. Perhaps the galaxy does not fear humans because of what they can destroy, but because of what they can protect. She had been speechless once before when her daughter first asked for the human. Tonight she was speechless again, but for a different reason. For the first time she understood, and deep in her heart, the proud queen of the Zathari knew this truth. The scariest thing about humans was not their power to fight, but their power to love. That's a full part 3 expanded to 1,000 words. Written in simple English, emotional, and engaging. Do you want me to now combine all 3 parts into one continuous story? Around 3,000 words total, so you